Good work here.
As we know, tomorrow, if you didn't know, is Veterans Day. So we want to make sure that we honor the veterans. I have Dad's flag up here. Dad served in the Korean conflict. He was actually stationed in Germany. He drove a tank, and a lot of his pictures show them driving tanks and whatnot, and a lot of them show him with a lot of beer steins in their hands. So I think he was a soldier of all soldiers, just did what they all did. But I also have his brother Clifford also went to Korea, but he fought in the Korean conflict. He was killed there. But the story was always told that he got a Purple Heart. He was in an area where the machine gunners were hitting them very hard, and a lot of his friends were laying out in the open. And he would go back out in the open, view them, and bring them back. And he did that several times until he was finally hit. And I take pride in that, although I never met this man. But it's just the idea of what he did, because I understand the sacrifice that he did. And sometimes I sit back and say, some of these veterans and what they've done, I don't know if I would do that. Even though I was in the military, I just don't know how I could step out and do some things they do. But I tell you what, because they're patriotic, because they love their country, because they were obedient, they did those things. So would anyone that's been in the active military, just please stand. We just want to give you just a quick little applause. So please do so, if you can. So you see who they were. If you get a chance after the service, just go up and shake their hands. I hear the story that in the younger kids in school these days, they're not really teaching history anymore. So some of this idea of what the veterans did for our freedoms, and actually the freedoms that many people use to attack the veterans and whatnot, are because they went out and fought, and because they helped us to have our freedoms. So I pray that that's not true, that they're not sharing that, but make sure that you let the veterans know that you appreciate them. Got just a short little poem. It's called Thank a Veteran. Today is the day we honor the noble and the brave, the men and women who dedicated their lives and the sacrifices that they made. When America had an urgent need, they were the first to raise their hand. Without thinking twice about it, they were proud to take a stand. Some came back from war with battle scars, others in flag-draped coffins. Even though their flesh may have left, their spirits will never be forgotten. They selfishly and knowingly put their lives on the line, so when you see a veteran, thank him, because without them, freedom would have died. That's a true statement for sure, so keep that in mind. So thank you, veterans, those that have served, and hopefully some of our young men and women will choose to serve. Appreciate that. I got a poem about deer camp I wrote, and so I just want to share this with you, because we're sitting here, so some of you aren't going through the whole deer camp experience. Has anyone really gone through like a week of deer camp? You understand what I'm talking about then. This will fit exactly. It's called Deer Camp Days, D-A-Z-E, Deer Camp Days. Oh, deer hunting days are here, lots of guys and gals full of cheer. There are Second Amendment rights in use. If you're against guns and hunting, my friend, well, you're a candidate for a quick kick in your caboose. If you're smart, you won't try and stop it. It's been happening like this for years. Don't want to get you riled up. Only protests should come from the deer. It's part of who we are in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and other places. When we aren't in the deer stand, most likely back at camp playing aces. And it's at the deer camp where lots of the fun takes place. Because you pack 10 guys, a dog, and all the gear in a musty, dark shack without enough space. But half the fun is the chow at the camp. It's just not strong enough. If your gut it don't cramp. Guys that don't cook at all the rest of the year all of a sudden become chefs when they're out hunting deer. Throw in a little of this, throw out a lot of that, you see. It'll put hair on your chest, sonny. You just wait and see. Then later on that night, as guys start crawling into the sack, hairy chests and whatever. Wow, sure didn't need to see that. Then up early the next morning and get out the lard and start cooking eggs and meat. Never mind what the doc tells you about grease-covered food. Why, it just can't be beat. Coffee is a sloshing, the toast it's a burning. To find somewhere better tasting to eat, lots of guys, they are a yearning. But it's all part of the camp game. You just try and live through it. Dishes keep piling up in the sink because no one gets around to it. Deer camp used to be tar-papered shacks made out of rough sawn lumber, with a wood stove that only works on high, and sweat and heat you try slumber. That darn stove is always too hot, like sleeping in a greenhouse. The only ones getting a good night's sleep are the non-deer hunting at home spouses. Let's not forget the sounds and smells that are included in this hunting affair. Enter and remain at your own risk. Heed the warnings that I say, if you dare. Lately the old hunting shacks are gone. Now new ones built with store-bought lumber. Some are fancier than my double-wide, even got their own internet and fire number. Eventually you take turns doing dishes. Some just use the same plate all week. What a kick. Some let their dogs clean the dishes. Darn if they don't get shinier as he washes them lick by lick. But they all make the pilgrimage to keep coming back, like it's not, now it's gotten in their blood. Start making plans for next year, come snow, rain, or even mud. As great as all that is all sounds too good to be true, pray that the good Lord can make a way to get an invitation to deer camp to you. Sure have a lot of clean fun, we all love it so much for sure. We're just hoping the rest of the year will go by fast, just like a blur. We're so full of great passion for things that we so cherish, wish we all had equal vigor would strive to attend a local parish. Jesus offers more than any old deer season can, because he died on the cross for every woman, child, and man. Make as much effort to love him as you do towards this deer season, because you want to retire in heaven and not hell. Now that's a hell of a reason. So hunters, be safe this weekend, have fun, but make it back in one piece, P-I-E-C-E. Then hunt down and seek out your Savior and beg a portion of his peace, P-E-A-C-E. Amen, that's it. Something to think about. So yeah, if you never got to deer camp, I tell you, there's stories, the smells, sounds, and all that, you just can't imagine. The human beings can do that to each other. Well, as Francie talked about, it's kind of getting to be that time of year when the holidays seem to roll in. I had shared a sermon very similar to this a few years ago, I think. But it was I was cruising through and kind of came across my old one, and I thought, you know what, it's so pertinent for today. I just want to kind of catch it before we get into the system and the season too hard. But it talks about the idea of leftovers. Now, in hunting shacks, they have lots of leftovers. They put a pot of something that's brewing all the time, and they just keep throwing stuff into it. And through the week, it kind of changes flavors and consistencies and whatnot. And so you just kind of keep throwing what you got left. Now, my dad kind of got into the routine of using the crock pot at home in the latter years after Mom had died. And so you would go over, and he'd be very proud of something cooking in a crock pot. And so you would ask him what it was, and that was the first mistake. Yeah. Because he would say, oh, there's a chicken wing, and there's a pork chop, and a wiener, and, and some potatoes and stuff, and it's been cooking like for a day and a half, just boiling there. And he didn't pass from that, believe it or not, just so you know. But he was very proud of that brew that was cooking there. And so the idea that he never had any leftover, Dad didn't consider anything leftover, he just kept eating it until it was gone. He just had different ways of doing it. Now, Sandy's grandma and Sandy's mom, they're queens of the leftovers. Some of you might be like them. I mean, we open up their freezer and you might find one bar of some kind of brownie, and then there might be another bar over here wrapped up from something else, and you don't know what year this took place, but there's all these little, one single cookie, and she never throws anything away. It's always wrapped up and put in the freezer for another time. Always willing to keep the leftovers. Her grandma was the same way. She would sometimes put everything in, kind of like my dad, put everything in one pot, and that's what you had for lunch. She'd clean the kitchen. I guess you'd call it the refrigerator cleaning supper, whatever it might be. So this idea of leftovers, how many of you like leftovers? Wow, good. We're going into that leftover season, aren't we, where you're cooking more. We had the grandkids over this weekend, and Sandy made lots of meatballs or whatnot, and so we've eaten a couple meals of meatballs. Some of the leftovers I like. Some leftovers I don't really like. It seems like once you've had them, for some of us, it's like you almost can't touch them anymore. We had that meal. And so there it sits in the fridge, and finally it gets thrown out. They said that in the United States that we have 30 to 40% of all the food supply in the world is in the United States. And a lot of it says best if used by, right? Now, how many of you prior to that, because some of you are older, ate whatever it was and you didn't worry about what date it was, right? Now, they also have something called the expiration date. In other words, something that's fine on this day, fine on Monday, on Tuesday, it's expired. Right? It's no longer good. Now, that's nothing new. We've been putting that on tombstones for many years, the expiration date, right? But this idea of best if used by, in 2010, 133 billion pounds, they estimate, or $161 billion worth of food was thrown away because it said, if not used, it's best by this date. Now, how do they figure that out? I mean, do they have some scientists sitting somewhere, and let's say they have a bottle of ketchup. And so they make the ketchup on Monday, and then he starts to taste it every day. It's good, it's good, it's good, a month or two. Now it's several years into the future, and he finally comes one day and goes, oh, that's bad. It was best by yesterday. I mean, how do they come up with that? Yeah. Except they do. There was a water bottle one time that I read, and it said, it was, this extravagant water, and it said, this water is 45 million years old, caught from the glaciers of the Rocky Mountains at just the right time to have perfection for you. Best by, blah, 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 date. 45 million years and 2 weeks, and it's no longer. I tell you, I think it's a scam. I think it's just a way for them to sell more food. But how many of you really go by that? Come on, be honest. The younger generation is doing it more and more and more. Man, they look and say, oh, it was due yesterday, it was Best By. It says Best By. It still might be great for another 3 months, but it was Best By Tuesday, but we're eating it on Thursday. But the new generation is getting trained idea, so we're wasting a lot of food. The leftovers are going out the door. 50% of all produce, they say, that is produced or harvested is thrown away. 60 million tons, or $160 billion worth of vegetables and fruits, which I don't care, I think it's fine. It's 75% is fine. 50%. Just imagine, they harvest 100% of the food and 50 of it's thrown out. It gets wasted. It's leftovers or it decays. They say that each person, on an average, wastes about a pound a day. Now, I don't necessarily think that's true, but that's what they're estimating. The government's spending that kind of money. There's 309.5 million people in the U.S. That's 112,967,500,000 pounds yearly, they say, that we waste. Now, if you've ever gone to a buffet, how many of you like buffets? I love buffets. The idea that you can graze, and you can go get a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and you just kind of have this freedom, because if you order a meal, guaranteed you get your food, and Sandy will get hers, and hers looks better than mine. And I'm like, how many of you said that? I wish I would order that. Yeah. But a buffet, it's like, that's just fine. I'll just wander over and get some of that stuff. But you see plates full of food wasted at a buffet. I don't understand that. Because you don't have to take it, but they load up and it gets wasted. So a lot of wasted. The 5 most wasted foods yearly, guess which is number 1? Bread. Actually bread. 240 million slices. I was just at, what's that place that used to have the next day store? Master Bread or whatever? Yeah. They closed their store. And I had heard it was because they couldn't find enough help. But what it really was, they closed it nationwide. And I went to talk to them about their store, and they're pitching all this stuff into the garbage. I mean, just from that next day. They want you to buy brand new so they don't sell it and lose money. Milk is the next thing. 5.9 million glasses of milk get wasted. Potatoes is the third one. 5.8 million potatoes, they figured. Cheese. I couldn't find exactly how much was wasted, but I did find where the government has 1.2 billion pounds of cheese in cold storage. Because they end up having too much excess milk, so they send it to the creameries. They make cheese out of it, and the government subsidizes them and buys the cheese. And so they have tons of cheese. So if you're looking for cheese, call your government, call in Peterson or somebody, and ask if you could have some of the cheese. They said if we would all eat, 3-point-some pounds of cheese each one day, we could get rid of that excess. So they went into that one. What would we buy the next few days, I wonder? Number 5 is apples. Probably because of Adam and Eve. 1.3 million thrown out each year. That's wasted. Now we're talking leftovers, things that are left. Now I'm talking about Sandy's grandma and Sandy's mom, and they didn't throw things out because they grew up in the Depression. And I worked in several nursing homes through the years where we would find people hoarding food. They didn't have to, but they would hoard food in their dresser drawers and things like that because of the Depression. The mindset was if you can get a hold of it, hang on to it. And if you have it, don't throw it away because you might need it. So here we come into Thanksgiving season, the leftover season. Good Housekeeping has about 20 or 29 best leftover turkey recipes. I mean, I didn't know there was that many. Turkey pot pie you can make, turkey full, whatever that is. Turkey mozzarella kale pesto ranini. Anyone in on that one? Turkey pasoli, leftover turkey club sandwich, turkey enchiladas, turkey melon wraps, Thanksgiving noodles with turkey, turkey and chorizo breakfast hash. So you don't have to throw your turkey out. You could go for weeks trying something new each and every time. But the thing is we're talking about leftovers today. So the people in the Depression, they learned to value leftovers. They did not see it as waste. They did not want to waste. They appreciated and valued everything that they had. So it may have qualified as a leftover to us, but to them it was not. It was not minimized. The definition of a leftover is this. But means remaining after the rest has been consumed or used. That's a leftover. You guys have that picture. So if I buy 10 apples to make a pie and I only use 8, I have how many left over? And if I have $100 and I spend $84 at L&M Fleet, I now have what left over? $16, my friends. $16 left over. That's what a leftover is. Now, how many of you feel comfortable serving leftovers to guests when you invite them over? A few people. Okay. Sandy and I had some friends out in Rapid City, Randy and Louise. If we called them, it didn't matter what we had, they would come over in grubby sweats and sweatshirts and pile on the couch. They were very relaxed, and we were very relaxed to be around them, and heck, we clean out the fridge. There was no problem. They had no issue with that. But really, I think for most of us, we say, if we're going to invite somebody over, if we're going to have a guest, we feel it has to be new food, right? Not a leftover per se, but we say, I need to make something nice for them, or I'll serve, we'll eat the leftovers tomorrow, whatever it might be, and so we oftentimes don't use leftovers. But yet, how many times do we, in our lives, look at our time and our finances and our heart, and we give Christ leftovers? Really. He gets the leftovers of who we are during a week. Because we're busy working, because we've got to raise kids, because of this, because of that, he kind of gets the leftovers. Now, we don't give our guests leftovers because we don't feel that's appropriate, yet we give the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, if we're honest sometimes, a lot of leftovers. He kind of gets the little bit that's left of you. Whether it's financially, or whether it's time-wise, or whether it's prayer time at home, or, I have an intention to get in the Word today, but I'm just so busy, I'm going to do it later on, and then at the end of the day, I'm tired, and we pop the TV on for a while just to relax after supper, and before long, we maybe don't catch them at all, or we just quickly read through a verse or two to say, Lord, I kept that promise to you. But it's really a leftover. Christ doesn't really work in leftovers, thank God. He isn't a leftover kind of God. He gives us his best, and then some, all the time. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. I'm not going to go to the all word, you guys know that. And lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. He is going to take and direct your path. If you'll draw near to him, if you'll pay attention to him, if you'll try to walk in his precepts and what he has for us, he says, I'll guide your paths. It doesn't say I'll kind of guide your paths, or if I have an hour this week, I'm going to come down and guide your path. He says, you draw near to me and spend time with me, and I will direct your paths. Period. No leftover in Jesus there. Not at all. Each and every one of us, he will take the time to direct our paths 24/7, 365, if we'll allow him to. But there again, we're just giving him leftovers of who we are, and he doesn't have a lot to work with. Doesn't have a lot to work with. If you've ever taught or tried to teach anyone something and they're so focused on other stuff and they aren't interested in what you're trying to teach them, it's frustrating because you say, I need to have you focusing on me, look at me as we do this, because you're not going to learn unless you pay attention to what I'm trying to teach you. Don't give me your leftovers. Don't give me your minimal. Give me all of you so that I can work with you and turn you into or teach you whatever it is you need to be. But oftentimes we just give the Lord a little bit of us. Just a little dabble-do-ya, like we talked about a few weeks ago. He just gets our leftovers. Now, I know we're busy. I'm not hammering on you. I know people are busy. Some of you are raising kids. Some of you are driving. I know some of you are driving to Fargo every day, early in the morning, working all day and coming back, and all these different things. But I encourage you That if you'll give God any time that you can, if you will focus and say, Lord, you know how busy I'm today, but I can give you a half hour, He will say, that is not a leftover. You're giving me some of the precious time that you have available. And you're thinking of me, and He'll bless you for that. It doesn't have to be hours. But He'll look at your life that day and say, let's see. Brian, you sat by the TV set and watched about Australian big road truckers for 4 hours. That was on today. While we were eating lunch. And you spent no time with me. Or you spent just a few minutes with me. Who got the leftovers?
Right.
Shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't Christ get the best of us and the rest of the world gets the leftovers? And I guarantee you this, I've talked with many people and they've all had the same experience. For me, if I wake up about 3 o'clock in the morning, it's usually the Lord talking to me. And at times I get up and I write sermons or write down things that He tells me. You know what? He always makes the day work. I don't cry and mope all day long saying I had to get up at 3 for Jesus and now I'm so tired. He makes it work.
Right. Yeah.
He gives you the extra time that you need. Joey, is this hitting home there? You got your steel-toed boots on? Just checking. But yeah, He will make a way because He wants to direct your paths. And your paths are always directed towards giving Him time and giving Him effort. If He's leading your path, He will always lead you to time with Him. The problem is oftentimes, again, we just give Him a little bit of us. The little extra that we have, or that, we'll fit it in somewhere, Lord, kind of thing. But jeepers, it just got too busy today. When it came to animal sacrifices in Exodus 12:5, it says this, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Not a scrub, not a cripple, not that, you walk in and he says, I got to give her an offering here. Well, I got that one limpery one over there that can't get to the water very good. I got to water it, so I'll give you that one, Lord. That's not what He wants. He says He wants the best. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. I want the best. I don't want a leftover. When you come to sacrifice to me, He said, give me your best. But see, you got to trust Him to do that. And you got to love Him more than you love maybe the money you get for that sheep later on. Or you got to love Him more than what that beef might taste like on your spit later on that summer. It's kind of like this. I've shared this analogy before, but let's say someone gives me a pickup load of beets. Brian, we just felt led to give you a pickup load of beets. Of course, I'm going to say thank you and roll my eyes as they eat. What am I going to do with these beets? And then someone else brings me a whole pickup load of prime rib. And so I come to church that night and I say, Lord, You have blessed me mightily. I want to give You all my beets. The Lord would look at me and say, Brian, you hate beets. That's no sacrifice. That's no offering to me. You're getting rid of something you don't want. Give me some of that prime rib. You keep some of the beets. Now, if I come to Him and say, you know what, Lord, I got this pickup load of beets that I don't know what You're supposed to do with beets. But I got this prime rib, but I want to give You the prime rib because you can bless someone with it. Now I'm not giving leftovers. I'm giving Him my best. How many of us would give Him the beets? It's like if you've ever done a rummage sale at church, the pastor might say, this is not a junk for Jesus rummage sale. In other words, if you're going to bring a couch that you would be glad to sit on, you'd be glad to put in your own home. Don't bring me the one where you threw out because Uncle Bernie died on it 7 years ago and it's been sitting in the garage and you want to get it out of your house. Because that would be a leftover. So when we think about giving to Christ in time or efforts or whatever it might be, especially, forget about the finances. So I don't want no one leaving here saying, Brian's trying to get my finances. Forget about that. Throw that off to the side. Just some of your time in the Word. Some of your time in prayer. Maybe listening to music, worshiping with Him, coming to churches, helping at the church, whatever it might be. Give Him your best and not your leftovers. Because if you give Him only leftovers, your life will look like leftovers. If you're only going to give Him a little bit of you, you're only going to get a little bit of Him back. And that abundant life we talk about, that victorious life, that walking in His peace and His joy and His abilities and all these different things, pretty much limited because we're not giving Him anything to work with again. We're just giving Him a little bit of leftovers. He does not want our leftovers. He wants what we can give Him that means something. Genesis 4, 3, and 5. And in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought out an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. And Abel also brought the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. Now the Lord respected Abel in this offering, but he didn't respect Cain. And we don't necessarily know why that is. It must have been the heart of his giving. And so when we give and we only give leftovers, it also affects our heart towards God. It kind of shows your heart towards God. Because if you'll minimally treat Him well, if you'll minimally put into Him and invest in Him with your time and efforts and heart, it's going to show. And so Cain must have done something with that stuff. He must have been grumbling, or he must have picked out just a little bit of it and kept the rest, or picked the best for himself and gave God something, because there, I honored you, God. I honored you with an offering, but we've come to realize how that went. We talked about last week in Matthew, but Mark 12, 41 to 44, I didn't give it to me, so you don't have to look it up. It's about last week. What did we talk about? Who were we talking about last week? Come on, team. Huh?
The old lady.
The old lady. Yes. The elderly lady with the 2 mites. And the rich man, and how they gave that offering. Remember that? And it said Jesus sat across from the offering plates and watched how people gave. And it wasn't their technique. It wasn't that some of them toss it to the side and some of them flip it up. It was their hearts and how they gave. But the issue is that he said the rich man gave out of his abundance. We could say the rich man gave out of his leftovers, but that little old lady gave everything, so there was nothing left over. There's a big difference there. So then we learn also that, again, it doesn't come down to the amount that we give or the amount that we give Him in our time or prayer time or Bible time. It's the quality of it, and it's how much it's a sacrifice to us to do it. Because if you're working 12 hours a day and taking care of kids another 5 hours and trying to get some sleep, but yet you make a way for the Lord to have time with you, He values that. He sees that. So don't ever get the idea, well, I can't give like Bill Gates can, so I just am not going to, because I sure can't compete with Bill Gates. Who can? Bill Gates would have to give $8 billion to be like the widow with her 2 mites, or more than that. So again, it comes back to our heart. And are we giving leftovers, or are we giving our best? We said we wouldn't give guests leftovers. Most of us did. We said we wouldn't do that. That wouldn't be what we would do. Yet we often do it for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. That just doesn't make sense. I want you to catch that. How easy it is to fall into the idea that Christ just gets a little bit of our leftover time. Well, I'm coming here, but I was hunting, and I'm coming here, and then I'm going to head home. But if your heart's right while you're here, that's fantastic. But if you're sitting here thinking, man, Brian's going, it's almost 7, kickoff said, ooh, and they talk for a while, 15 minutes to get home, you're already home. You might as well just go, because you're already there. And He sees our hearts. He knows where you're at. So are you just giving Him a few leftovers by hanging out? I don't know. But ask God about that, because I have to ask Him about myself often. I was reading about the guy that owns Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. He makes $62.3 billion, almost $70 billion last year. But he gave $400 million away, which is great. But he gave $62.3 billion, and it says he makes about $15 billion yearly. So he's going to recoup that and be able to give. So I can't compete with him. It's not about that. But they say that the annual nationwide, worldwide income is $9,733. So if you're making more than $9,733 in a year's time, we're rich. We're the rich man. We're the rich man. Every one of us. Filthy rich we are. So we have to look at how we give with what God has given us. Because He sits back and He watches those things. I think I wrote down too, Mark Zuckerberg, just as a side note, you know how much he makes an hour? Sorry, that was the ringer. It's time's up. He makes $1.7 million an hour on average. I could live on it. I think I could live on it. I just want to work an hour and then quit. John 3:16 says this, "For God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son, or only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish, or should not perish, but have everlasting life." His one and only Son, no leftover. No leftover.
That's right.
He gave what he had, the best that he had, his son, one and only. Now we go into Samuel, and remember that God told Samuel to go to anoint the next king of Israel, so he goes to Jesse's house, and Jesse has, I believe it's 7 boys, and they march the boys past, thinking this has got to be the guy. The oldest son, he's a good-looking man. Of course that's the guy. It's not the guy. Boom, boom, boom. Is this it? Is this all the sons you have? Oh, we got little old David out there tending the sheep. Well, bring him on in. Well, that's just David out there. He's just a scrub. And yet he comes in and he was the one anointed king. See, God has an idea of what's a leftover or not. And oftentimes we think we have an idea of what's a leftover or not. And many of us have lived our lives feeling like we're leftovers. I was talking with someone, I won't say his name. There's a song out called Nobody. I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody that saved my soul. Now that sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? But he brought up a pretty good point. He said, in my life, my self-esteem and all these different things that took place in my life, I was called nobody a lot. And so all of a sudden that song takes a whole new meaning. To say I'm a nobody reinforces the idea that he is a nobody. But yet when we come to know the Lord, we become somebody, don't we? But the point is that oftentimes some of us, because of what we've lived through, feel like we're leftovers. And then because we feel like we're a leftover of society, we act like it. We don't assume that we can ever be any more than that we've earned this right, or for some reason I've been placed in this position, and this position says I'm supposed to act this way, or limit myself, or say I can't do anything, or I could never do that, because other people have said that. This is God, and God does not see leftovers. He sees his children. He sees people that he loves. And so if you've been downtrodden and feel like you have felt like a leftover, been treated like that, I want you to know that you spend some time with God, and he will let you know that you are not a nobody and you are not leftover whatsoever. Matthew 25:40 says, and the king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to the one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. Remember he was talking about those that visited jails and took care of the poor. And they said, well, when did we do this, Lord? He said, if you did it for them, you did it for me. They did not see society's leftovers. They saw children of God, and they had the love of God, and they served those people. They saw those people through the eyes of Christ, and they treated them like that, and not treated them in a judgmental way. And before long, they were helping those that Christ says, if you help them, you're helping me. They did not see leftovers. How many of us tend to see society's leftovers sometimes when we're looking around? Oftentimes we do. And when we make that call, you guys said we don't really value leftovers, so we probably don't value them that much. Cast-offs. Burnt out. Done with. None and dones, we call it. So we're coming into the busy holiday season. We got Black Friday coming up. We got Cyber Monday and shopping and trip planning and foods and decorations. And we got Thanksgiving meal here. We got Christmas parties and Christmas celebrations and Christmas Eve service here and all these different things. And as we come into this season of leftovers, please don't let him be left over. Put him first in all that you do. Whether it's through this season or every day. Make him first. Carve out time in the morning to spend with him before you start your day. Give him your best, not just what's left at the end of the day. And I guarantee you can build your relationship and feel what that victorious life is. You hear people say, well, I've got a victorious life in Christ. And you're saying, well, I don't feel any of that. But then try to look at how they live their lives. If they're giving Christ more of themselves and the best of themselves, they're getting the best of him back. 1 Samuel 15:22 says, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. Again, it's not about sitting here. It's not about jumping through the hoops for God. He looks at our hearts, and he looks at who we are, and are we contrite, and are we sorry, and are we, repenting of things that we've done. Psalms 51:17 says, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. These, O God, you will not despise. Again, it's giving to God. And I'm going to close with this. Watchman Nee wrote this in a book called Normal Christian Life. We cannot expect a tailor to make us a coat if we do not give him any cloth. I want to be clothed in Christ. Loretta, can you make stuff if you don't have the cloth? Not at all. nor a builder to build us a house if we let him have no building materials. We want to build our house on the rock. And in just the same way, we cannot expect the Lord to live out his life in us if we do not give him our lives in which to live. It's a pretty simple idea. The Lord wants all of you. We won't hit the all word. You guys know about the all word. He wants all of us so that he can do all he can in us and through us. To give us the life that he wants us to have. Bob and Randy are going to come up and they're going to sing us a song. This song is, Sandy, why don't you come and share what you've got? And then we'll talk about that.
Sandy, Marlette,